Hey, this is Ramon Ray, founder of Smart Hustle Media. Thanks for joining me for another exciting discussion podcast interview. If you're reading this or not, that is great. And thank you for your time today being with us. And you can find out information, insights, interviews like this at smarthustle.com. And again, my name is Ramon Ray. Sarah and Robbie, thanks for joining us today from Tungsten Prep. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate your time and sharing your story, your journey, struggles, if you had any, with us today. How are y'all doing?
Great. Good to be here.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. So I'm curious right at the top, Robbie, what is Tungsten Prep? And right after that, Sarah, I'd love to know, because it's a common question I ask when there's partners involved, how do you all divide the labor between who works on what? Just curious. But Robbie, why don't you start us off? What is Tungsten Prep in a short nutshell?
Tungsten Prep is a tutoring and test prep company that serves students in the DC area, high school, middle school, with one-on-one academic tutoring and test prep for standardized tests to get them into university, ACT, SAT.
Got it. And I'm curious, do you find, Robbie, that the parents are your customer, or do you have a number of students who are the customer who are banging on the doors, the parents who are the real customer getting their kids into your program?
Yeah, no, it's the parents or the clients generally, and then the student is the one we're giving care to, I'd say.
Awesome. Curious, Sarah, how do you all, I assume both of you are the leaders of the company. How do you all divide that? And you do it, but also sharing a tip for others who have partners involved, whether they're married or not, single or not, but partners at the leadership level. What's your advice for them? So how do you all do it, and what's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely been a learning and growing experience.
Sure.
It's been good for our marriage and most of the time. And I think that in any partnership, whether it's marriage or a business partnership, I think that you have to really embrace the complementarity and learn to understand what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and what your partner's strengths and weaknesses are, and really try to backstop each other, really to try to divide labor in a way that amplifies our respective strengths. So for us, we had the advantage actually of having worked together for many, many years in the State Department before we started the business. So we had a rhythm for how we worked well together. But we have a meeting every single morning, and we've realized that what we need to do, I'm the to-do list maker, and it makes him a little crazy, but I write down everything that I think that we want to do that day or we want to accomplish. And then we have like a 10-minute meeting just to talk about it and who's going to do what. But any big decision, we always make together, and we definitely we'll get into it, and we have some heated exchanges, some friendly exchanges, and that's part of the partnership. But I think we're a lot stronger. I actually started the business within a year, realized that bringing in my best friend, my life partner, and someone who had really complementary skills made it a lot stronger. And, if you read a lot of companies that say having co-founders makes the business a lot stronger, and there's a better trajectory for that when you have two respective strengths. So
sure, absolutely. And talking about the meetings you have, Sarah, how does that work? For example, proverbially Thanksgiving, or you're having a meal together. Do you chat about business then, or do you have a wall? Some people do, some people don't. And the meeting, if you've just had a meeting about who sweeps up the garage, who washed the dishes, why is the insurance not done, can you integrate Tungsten Prep stuff in that meeting? Or this is a wall, like this is a Tungsten Prep meeting. We're not talking about your mother, my mother. We're talking about Tungsten Prep. How does that work?
We have found, and this was a learning experience, we found that we really have to keep those separate. And so we are very clear and intentional that the workday is, 7 to 3, 7 to 4, something like that. And during that time period, we talk about it. We're also the parents to two small children who are 9 and 7. And part of the reason we do this business is we have that flexibility to really be with them when we want to. And so we want to be able to then disconnect, be present for our kids, be present for our partnership in marriage, and not bring in the business stuff or bring in the mother-in-law stuff or whatever it might be. But that was a learning experience. We didn't do that at first, and it caused some tensions and strife. And so even if you're not married to your business partner, I mean, most business partners get together because they like each other. Maybe they were friends, they knew each other in college. And so trying to come up with some rules of the road to keep that separate, I think, has been really helpful for us.
Sure. No, that makes sense for sure. Robbie, let me turn to you. Can you give us an insight into the journey of Tungsten Prep, how it started, why it started in the beginning days? I want to touch on as well where it's at now, where you're going, but just give us a flavor for how it started, what that was like. And again, any lessons learned, whether it was you or Sarah, and Sarah, feel free to jump in, both of you can, that we can learn for others. So however you want to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the story is more Sarah's to tell because she's the one who started the company.
Sure.
We live in Washington, D.C., which is a very expensive area. We work for the government, which is a decent salary, but it's still a very expensive part of the world to live in. So we needed a little extra money to help pay the mortgage, and Sarah decided that she put in an ad she's a math whiz and decided to apply those skills to helping local high school students. Do you want to learn more?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people I'm kind of an accidental entrepreneur. I mean,
Okay.
we spent 17 years in the Foreign Services diplomats serving in Afghanistan, Iraq, Liberia, Brussels, Paris, all over the world together. That was a wonderful experience. We came back. Our kids were getting a little older, really starting to love school, and we were kind of reflecting on, did we really want to go abroad again, or did we want to kind of make DC our home? And I had a friend at work, and I was like, God, this mortgage is like killing us. And she's like, you're good at math. She's like, I actually like tutor some kids on the weekend in math. She's like, you could do that. And I was like, what, me? And I taught SAT for Kaplan back in college, and I'd always loved students. And I actually had my own little tutoring business in high school, making $17 an hour in 1992, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I liked it, but it's not something I've done in years. And I was like, well, you know, who's going to hire me? I'm like a foreign service officer. Anyway, I put a little ad in the local newspaper or the local neighborhood listserv. Right. And within 24 hours, I had 3 clients. And what I came to realize really quickly is you look at tutoring and it's a very crowded space. You have a lot of online players. You have a lot of boutique players charging a lot of money for very specialized services. But what families are really craving, or some families are really craving, is someone who can meet them in the middle with kind of like a mid-price service that comes to their home and is really, really focused on understanding their student and their student's needs and building that long-term relationship, both with the student and with the parents, which you can do when you go into the home. And really building the student's confidence, building their long-term study skills, and really helping them feel good about themselves. Because we discovered very quickly, like, the branding of a lot of tutoring companies is, we're going to get you into Harvard. And guess what? Like, not everyone's going to get into Harvard, and not everyone wants that as their life path. And so moving in a different direction, saying, what do you want? What are your goals? What's going to make you feel proud of yourself?
Powerful.
Is powerful. And what we also found was, so I taught math through calculus, SAT, ACT, and then US and world history. And what we also found was schools started coming to me like, the reason I'm sending you students is because girls don't believe they can do calculus, and they don't want a male tutor. They're like, they don't want this 23-year-old, math guy in their house. He might be really nice, but they just don't feel comfortable being vulnerable with him. And that was when the light bulb really went on. And I was like, we can, because at that point I was starting to get more referrals than I personally could handle. As it happens, my cousin, who lives 2 miles away from us by chance, has a PhD in physics from Hopkins. And so I called her and I was like, Janelle, can you help take on some of these physics students? And she's worked at NASA for years, but was staying home with some kids and wanted some. So it was like one of these things, and it sort of snowballed. And we realized that, DC is an incredibly diverse city, both in terms of its student population, Georgetown, George Washington University, American University, and in terms of the composition of the city. And you have a lot of students, a lot of Black students, a lot of women, a lot of Latinos who don't believe, who have never met someone who had a woman who has a PhD in physics.
Sure.
And so to have that role model come into their house and be like, this is how I did it. This was my path. And yours might be different, but you can find that path and let me help you. So reassuring and empowering for the students, and I think really powerful for the parents too, because to your first question, the clients are the parents, and they felt really good about it too. So this was the way we kind of started to snowball. And then I brought on some other tutors and tried to figure out how the heck to build a website and register a business. And then after a year, we realized that it was getting beyond my capability alone. So Robbie came on, and that's when really the business started to grow, because we were able to use our complementary strengths to support and grow the business in a way that I was.
Awesome. Were you surprised, Sarah? Thank you for sharing that. Were you surprised, Sarah, how it was? I go through this a lot. My mom and others, good people, Ramon, you're good at baking, or tell my wife, you're good at sweeping up. She just started a sweeping business. Did you find there's a difference between great at math and then starting a business, Sarah?
Oh yeah, for sure. And so as we've grown, I actually pulled back from tutoring after about, so we're 3.5 years into the business. I tutored for about 1.5 years. And what I realized is I like working with students, but what I like more is building a business. I think it's incredibly creative, and every day is a learning experience. And so I find myself in the position of being kind of a student, right? That's what you are as an entrepreneur. And so we are very clear about the fact that we are not the best teachers in the company. We have 35 tutors, many of whom have taught for many years, who have PhDs in the subjects that they teach. We learn from them every day. And so I think as we've scaled the business, our lesson learned is really want to clear about what your goals are as a business owner. But if your goal is growth, you may want to start reaching out and finding people who are actually a lot better than you are about, being accountants or being teachers or whatever it might be, and that you are the one that manages the business and does business development and deals with the marketing team and sales and so on. And so that's been really helpful for us as we brought on that expertise. And I think being partners and having to learn each other's strengths and weaknesses and being reflective on our own weaknesses in turn helped us be very intentional as we were reaching out and building a team about filling in those gaps that we're like, we don't know anything about sales, or we don't know how to build a math curriculum, whatever it might be.
Absolutely love it. Robbie, I want to ask you about, to help us understand that jump from when you came in to when Sarah was doing this, not alone, but without you there, without a senior level partner. I'm curious what changed, what you brought in, and not just you, but what others can learn from. Before I ask that question though, Robbie, I have to ask this. I have a few people who worked in foreign service. I used to work at the United Nations, by the way, 2 UN plazas. So maybe we've crossed paths in somewhere, but is it like the movies, Robbie? Like, did you wear your sleeves rolled up and you went into a dusty room and had to sip the tea, and there were 4 US armed men quietly in the shadows behind you, and then you drove in I think it's a Range Rover, they drive with blacked out windows, speeding on the road, and they meet the person, and your security guy saying, don't go, and you're saying, no, we have to go to bring peace. Is every day, is that, and then there's music playing as you're walking out of the hut. Is that how it is every day for you?
Always. No, it's like that actually, but it's without the music and without the, it's quite.
Got it.
Pictures of ourselves in a flak jacket in a Range Rover.
Okay.
Ourselves wearing our Ann Taylor suit or Brooks Brothers suit, sitting in an office answering emails. Got
it. Love it. So Robbie, give us a vision of what that was like. Because I think what I'm hearing Sarah talk about, and I know I want to get into as well in this, you guys are the winners of an amazing grant from Salesforce. We're going to touch on that next. But before we do that, Robbie, help us understand, many small businesses are in that very small business growth stage, that hustle stage. I'm just interpreting. Sounds like maybe Sarah was there, brought you in, and together you all be able to take it to the next level due to a variety of reasons. Can you help us unpack that, Robbie? What can we learn from your experience? What can my audience learn from what you all went through?
I mean, I think the thing I brought in was complement Sarah's leadership skills by bringing in, I had some project management expertise in the foreign service. So I tried to bring in that to try and formalize processes, and be it with hiring, how we did our marketing and sales outreach, tried to make sure we had standardized ways for doing things, and tried to make sure that those were able, since Sarah was growing so large, ensure that we were able to maintain the same level of quality that when she had a smaller company, as we grow, that we really kept it boutique and personal, and people still felt like they had the personal touch, even though we were growing in the number of customers that we had.
And if I may add, I think where Robbie is really, really strong, where a lot of business owners, this was my struggle as a business owner, he's really good at saying no. And what I mean by that is—
That's a powerful word, by the way. Powerful word.
It's a powerful word. And, maybe it's gendered, maybe it's me. I was very bad at saying no. And what that meant was someone would send me an email, oh, do you want to do a webinar together? Oh, can you meet with me, or this and that. And as we grew, we're still small, but in the ecosystem of small businesses, we were getting bigger and other people wanted to partner with us. And so to be nice, and because I thought maybe it would be an opportunity, I was saying yes to things, and it was stretching me really thin, and it was not strategic. And so Robbie, I'm yes to everything, coming in and being like, this is our agenda. We need to drive this train in this direction. And here's the 2 or 3 things we want to accomplish this month. And they're big and important things. And if we do that, we'll really move the ball down the road. And you know what? It's okay if you don't get to that person's email for 24 hours. And that was hard for me. And I think that there were probably a few people who it was hard for them to receive that from me. But for the sake of our business, for the sake of our employees who mean a lot to us and are amazingly dedicated, and for the sake of our family. I mean, this is how we make money. I really felt like that was the key to our success is learning how to be more strategic in our yeses and our nos.
Yeah, I think that is powerful. It's funny, relationships. Me and my wife go through a similar thing, and it could be a variety of different reasons, but I can imagine somebody asking Sarah, could you please burn yourself out for the 5th day in a row and do this? Sarah's like, you know what? I'd love to. Can you go talk to Robbie first? Robbie's like, no, can't do it next.
Yeah.
Sarah can keep her smile and say yes, and or do what she does well, and Robbie can be like, sorry, move on, next. No. Robbie and Sarah, whoever wants to kick this off, let's touch on this. I know as we're taping this, we're in the middle of, toward the end of July, beginning of August, and many small businesses are hurting. Cash is everything. I had a talk with Rhonda Abrams, a fellow influencer in the small business world, and she mentioned that just a few days ago to me. Talk to us, unpack this a bit, this award as much as you can. If you can't, no problem, I know about it. But the Salesforce grant that many small businesses got, I think totals of several $1 million they provided. You all, I think, were the recipient of 10 grand, if I'm good. Yeah, 10 grand. What does it mean to you? Why is it so important for you all, but also other small businesses that just need cash? Sarah, Robbie, who wants to start off on that?
Yeah, you're right. Cash is king right now. And if I had one piece of advice for small businesses, it's like conserve your cash. Don't spend money if you don't need to, and only spend your money on things that are going to grow your business. So let me just say, we are so grateful to Salesforce for this grant. I think it's amazing that they're supporting small businesses like this and bringing the word out. And it's a great company, and we're so honored that they gave us this. And the outpouring of support and appreciation for small businesses has been really outstanding through all of this, and so different than 2009 when, right, it was all TARP and focused on, let's say, Goldman Sachs. And so that has been really meaningful. My advice would be, if you haven't accessed the Paycheck Protection Program yet, even if you're a solo entrepreneur, do it. The deadline's not until August 3rd. They're looking like they're going to do a second tranche of it. A lot of people were really discouraged in the early days of getting the money, but it's slowed down. And so I think people really need to make sure they access that money. And the 2 subsidiary lessons learned there, well, make sure you have a relationship with a community bank, right? Like Wells Fargo and BB&T, they're looking at the big guys. But if you're making less than a few $1 million in revenue, we were really fortunate to already have a relationship with a community bank. So we got our money by mid-April, and that was really definitive to us. And the other thing is, get your books in order. I mean, cash is king, but if you don't have your books in order, and I do think that a lot of businesses rely on QuickBooks. It's okay. Personally, we made the transition to Bench about 6 months ago. Love them. I highly recommend them for small businesses. And then when it was like, okay, let's do a year-on-year comparison of your operating expenses and your revenue, it was like 2 minutes it took me to do all of that. And so that really made it a lot easier. So that would be my advice on the cash is king. Now, in terms of what we've been using the money for, first of all, we've been really focused on making sure we pay our people. We have not been quite as hard hit by some businesses, but the spring was not easy, when schools were closed. So we wanted to make sure we really took care of our people because we're in this for the long game. So we had a number of projects in our back pocket, and I think that's really important because every business is going to have slower periods. So like when you're churning and you're churning and churning, still be thinking of like, okay, when things slow down, what do I want to do? And we knew what we wanted to do is we wanted to focus on some curriculum development that would improve things for the long term. We also wanted to focus on some marketing initiatives, both in terms of the digital marketing space and building up our kind of content repository.
By the way, your website looks really good from my vantage point.
Thank you. Thank you. He is actually the photographer. All of the pictures on our website, we are very proud to say, are
it looks good, man.
There is no stock photography on our website. It's there's one, yeah. But we wanted it to be really genuine and authentic and be about us and really about our students and our tutors. So thank you.
Nice.
But yeah, so the Salesforce grant was really, really helpful to us to kind of give us that sense of like, okay, we can breathe now. This is like a little extra wiggle room. And so wherever you can find that wiggle room through Paycheck Protection, you know, apply for every grant possible.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like for the application? I'm curious, when you heard about it or whatever, it came in an email, somebody told you, you apply, you're waiting. What does that feel like when Salesforce calls or they send a balloon to your airplane, however Salesforce does it? Salesforce is an amazing company.
They are an amazing company, yes.
What does it feel like to win that? And I think sometimes for me, I think it's beyond just the monetary money, which is important. It's the feeling of accomplishment. And I think it's hopefully opportunities like this. Your name gets out there a bit and it's hard to measure, but it's a bump in people seeing about Tungsten Pro.
It was like a Publishers Clearinghouse moment. It was great.
Yes.
I think it's also a sense of validation, honestly, that we are being recognized for trying to make a contribution in a really good way to our community and to the students that we support locally. That's what it meant to me, honestly. I was so excited because we've been working so hard on this project, and to get just that little bit of recognition, really think, oh, it's like we are doing a good job and doing something interesting. So that's what it was.
Yeah, no, I quite agree. I mean, I think small businesses have been in a collective state of depression the last 4 months.
Yes.
And can I make it? And really hand-wringing, what am I doing wrong? And you know, of course, it's not what they're doing wrong, but yeah, having, and Salesforce, I mean, that's a company that we've admired for a really long time. And so to be validated by a company of that caliber really felt great.
Yeah, talking about Salesforce, it's probably, I don't know if it doesn't directly apply, but Trailblazer by Mark Minioff. So definitely. Curious, as we come to the end of our conversation, and we should probably have a second phone call, but I'm curious, and you all can just, you can tag each other under the table, who goes or whatever, but I just want to jump into things like marketing, hiring, leadership. Those are 3 core things. Tips on that, just marketing. How are you marketing the business? Is it word of mouth? Are you doing ads? Any high-level tips you can give? I'm sure there's a lot you could say on marketing, but give us what you're doing, and then maybe share with others who have maybe online businesses. Let's start there. Marketing tips. I know it's an open question, but anything you either want to share on that, marketing tips?
I think you really have to market to what your market is looking for and to your local market, what their needs are. With ours, I mean, we do something very specific, niche, and very emotional because it's parents' children. So we try, and word of mouth is a big one for us in our industry. I don't know if you want to speak.
Yeah, I mean, so we made the decision early on, and this was partly because we had no cash for advertising on Google and so on. You know, if your neighbor tells you, oh, we use Tungsten Prep, they were great for math, and we recommend them, that means a heck of a lot more than seeing a Google ad, right? And so our initial marketing efforts were all about treating our original clients like absolute gold and making sure that the people who wanted to be evangelists for us knew how valued they were and got that special care and attention, and that they could go out and tell people, asking for it too. People love to be first to know about something new, you know? And so we have people who have been so incredibly generous with us and making introductions to schools, making introductions to tens and dozens of new clients, and they'll be the ones bragging like, well, we were the 3rd client of Tungsten Prep. And we absolutely love that because we love them so much, and they feel good about that. Not everyone is that way, but there's always that person who wants to know about the new restaurant or the new thing, and when they've been satisfied with it, wants to tell others. And then also we were really focused on building relationships with multipliers.
Mm.
And in our field, that was, learning specialists and college counselors at schools, because they have dozens of people who come to them and say, my kid's struggling in chemistry, what do I do? And if they can grab them like, well, here, call Tungsten Prep, we've had great luck with them in the past. We really built those relationships. We also focused on building relationships by what we could do for people, not sales cold call, right? So when I would call a new school, I would say, hey, would you like us to come in and talk to your parents about your junior parents about the SAT and the ACT? And hey, we can give you guys a practice test during school hours. And so we were offering things that were a win for them, but also a marketing opportunity for us. And so that we had to do things that were cheap, right? Because we had time and not money. And then you get to a certain point and you say, okay, well, now we have a little more money. And then the next iteration is looking strategically at what you do about your SEO and what you do to make your website look really great, how you build out your content, how you start doing, Facebook and Google ads. But I think a lot of companies pour a lot of money into advertising, particularly online advertising, before they've built a brand, before they understand their customers, before they have 30 5-star reviews on Google. And so I think starting small and starting lean are a really smart idea. You're going to run through a lot of cash really quickly.
That is powerful. Damon John talks about in his book, The Power of Broke. When you don't have money and as it were, you get very creative. One more question. Let's talk about hiring. I'm curious because you're in a business that, if Bob or Jenny, whoever you outsource or hire out online, offline, doesn't matter, but somebody representing you goes out and screws up. It's Tungsten Pro. Yep. Tungsten Pro did it wrong. Tungsten Pro did it wrong.
Yep.
So how do you resolve that? How do you hire? How do you fire? Any tips, advice, how you're doing it? And then what can we learn from you, how to hire right people to represent our companies?
Don't just go and post on job boards, but let your people know that once you have an established team, help them find you the type of people that you want to work with. That's a big one for me. It's not just it's really asking, hey, do you know people? Because a lot of our people are in the situation where they have friends who are in similar situations where they're looking for the type of part-time work we offer.
Right.
So I think that's a big one. Don't just hire, and when you're hiring, don't just hire for the qualifications. All of our people have teaching experience and are really, really smart, but you have to really do a deep think about what are our customers looking for when they want someone who's going to come into their home and tutor their kids. They're looking for someone who's personable, who's relatable, who's kind and understanding, and especially who's a good listener in our case. And that's kind of been the formula that we've used when we try to find tutors that work really well. And in general, we've done a pretty good job of that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons that we've been able to grow as quickly as we have is that we've really, really focused on the hiring process. And Robbie had a lot of experience with hiring processes at the State Department and building those out. And he has a really, it's the whole power of no, he has a really good gimlet eye for the person who's saying the things you think that, they think you want to hear, and the person who really wants to be a part of your company and really is going to be dedicated for the long term. And so that's been very helpful. But also we treat our employees well. We have a reputation for offering the highest wages of any tutoring company in the DC area and maybe in the country.
Nice.
So people come to us because they know that we really appreciate them and we remunerate them accordingly. And so their friends, they joke to us sometimes that their friends they're like, I can't believe you make this much money to teach Latin. So their friends hear about it and people want to work for us. And we, most of our employees are graduate students getting their PhDs at a local university in Washington State. And so for them to get really good teaching experience is something that's going to put them on a career trajectory that's positive for them for the long term. And so Robbie and I have been very intentional because we understand who our clients are. And when I say clients, our employees, we had a lot of experience doing mentoring and professional development at the State Department. And so we do that with our employees. We say, what are your 5-year goals? What are your 10-year goals? You may not be with us that whole time. Probably you won't. But can we, write you that letter to the next employer that's going to help you get into grad school or get that internship at the NIH? Can we help you? We have one employee who's building her own business, and so we really help her and provide that moral and substantive support. And I mean, it reaps dividends in terms of loyalty, and it just emanates from them when they're with the students that they're happy to do what they're doing and that they love their job.
Wow, this is awesome. Let me give you a test, Robbie. So I have a friend of mine. He's off the charts in Mensa. He has PhDs from Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Penn State, and some California and some place in California, which I don't remember. The White House invited him to speak. Congress invited him to speak. He's been to 500 countries. He invented the periodic table. He's just off the chart, Robbie. He wants to work for Tungsten Prep. Only small problem is he hates kids. He has a small problem stealing. Can't trust him too well. But he's genius, Robbie, genius. And he'll come half the price, Robbie. He'll take Tungsten Press off the charts a whole new level. Will you hire him?
I think we'll recommend that he go look elsewhere for employment. He's probably just not right for our team.
He's overqualified.
Yeah.
I love it. I wanted to test how serious you were by hiring good people. No, yeah. But Robbie and Sarah of Tungsten Prep, this has been amazing. Congratulations to winning the Salesforce grant, helping small businesses. Salesforce definitely is a powerful force in small business, not just with this grant, but for years. I know they're focused with their Salesforce Essentials and so many other amazing programs they have. But Sarah, Robbie, thank you for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. I'm Ramon Ray, founder of Smart Hustle Media, and this has been another podcast interview discussion with smarthustle.com. If you're listening to this or reading this and you see it somewhere, rate it. Say it's great. If you don't like it, quietly say it to me. But again, Ramon Ray with Smart Hustle Media at smarthustle.com.